Most business owners are looking at the federal budget and asking how much more tax they'll pay. I think that's the wrong question, and for some business owners, it could become a very expensive mistake, because one of the biggest mistakes business owners make is focusing on what's changing today while missing where Australia may be heading tomorrow. And that mistake can become very expensive. The real question is, what does this federal budget tell us about where Australia is heading? Because right now, more business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors are quietly creating exit options. Not because they're leaving tomorrow, not because they hate Australia, and not because they're panicking. They're doing it because they understand something important. The people with the most flexibility tomorrow are usually the people who start planning today. Hi, I'm Vina White, CEO of WellSafe, and in this episode, I want to explain why this federal budget matters far beyond tax rates, deductions, thresholds, or political debate. Because I don't believe the budget itself is a real story. I believe the real story is what it signals about Australia's long-term direction. And for business owners, that's often far more important than any individual tax announcement. One of the most common assumptions I see is this: I'll deal with residency, structuring, and international planning later if I ever need it. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. After all, most business owners are busy building businesses, managing staff, dealing with customers, and trying to grow profitability. International planning can feel like something for the future. But here's the problem. By the time many people decide they need options, the pressure already exists. The business has become larger, the tax exposure has become greater, the family circumstances have become more complicated, and the available options are often far more limited than they would have been earlier. That's why timing matters. Most people look at a federal budget as a list of announcements: new rules, new thresholds, new incentives, new taxes. But successful business owners understand something different. Individual policies come and go, governments come and go, budgets change every year. What matters is the trend. What matters is the direction. And over time, we've seen a consistent pattern: increasing compliance, increasing reporting obligations, increasing complexity, increasing government oversight, and increasing taxation pressure on productive individuals and business owners. For example, a business owner generating $2 million a year through their business often has significantly more flexibility available than a business owner who waits until a $20 million business sale or restructure is already underway. The earlier the planning begins, the more options typically exist. The later the planning begins, the more constraints usually appear. That's not because anything has gone wrong. It's simply because timing changes what may be possible. This isn't about politics. It's simply about recognizing the environment in which you're operating. Business owners don't make decisions based solely on today's conditions. They make decisions based on where they believe conditions are heading. The wealthiest and most successful people I work with rarely wait until they're forced to make a decision. They prepare before the decision becomes urgent. They create options around residency, options around where they live, options around where they operate, options around banking, options around investments, options around structures, and importantly, options around their future. Creating an option does not mean using the option. This is where many people get confused. A business owner exploring Singapore doesn't necessarily intend to move. A business owner obtaining a second residency doesn't necessarily intend to leave Australia. A family establishing international banking doesn't necessarily intend to relocate tomorrow. They're simply creating flexibility. And flexibility is one of the most valuable assets any business owners can have. One of the biggest mistakes I see is waiting until pressure already exists, waiting until the business is sold, waiting until a major liquidity event occurs, waiting until residency becomes important, waiting until the family wants to relocate, waiting until taxes become even more painful, waiting until government policy becomes uncomfortable. Because once pressure exists, planning becomes harder, residency becomes harder, evidence becomes harder, banking becomes harder, structuring becomes harder, and implementation becomes significantly more expensive. The best outcomes are almost always achieved by those who started planning before they needed to. The business owners who are positioning themselves well right now are asking different questions. They're not asking, how do I avoid tax? They're asking, how do I create flexibility? They're not asking, where can I pay the least tax? They're asking, what gives my family the greatest number of future options? They're not asking, how quickly can I leave? They're asking, how do I prepare properly if I ever decide to? These are very different conversations, and they produce very different outcomes, because successful business owners understand that optionality has value long before it's ever used. For me, the federal budget isn't really about tax changes. It's a reminder that governments change, policies change, rules change, economic conditions change, but the need for flexibility never changes. And that's why more business owners are quietly creating exit options, not because they're running away, not because they're panicking, but because they understand that preparation creates freedom. The people who preserve the most flexibility are really the people who react last. They are usually the people who prepare first. And that preparation often starts long before someone ever leaves Australia, because once pressure exists, the available options are often far more limited. But here's the question. If more successful business owners are creating options, what options are they actually creating? Because most people assume it's about tax. In many cases, it isn't. And that misunderstanding can send people down the wrong path entirely. In the next episode, I'll explain why some business owners are looking beyond Australia, why the lowest tax country is often the wrong answer, and why strategy matters far more than tax rates. I'll see you in episode 2.